I am Groot.
Shut up! Hello everyone, welcome to the Bucket List Reviews. My name is Jabran and this is the review of the longly awaited sequel to the first quirky, unexpected hit of summer of 2014, Guardians of the Galaxy Vol.II. The film takes off almost where the first one left off. The Guardians are now a group of mercenaries who for a quick buck get into different exciting adventures, but along the way they meet Ego, a man who might have some personal connection with Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, and his past. James Gunn returned as the writer-director for this film, and instead of just retelling the past storyline, Gunn explores the team members much more this time around. What impact did a fatherless parenting have on Quill? What exactly is he searching for in life? Why does Gamora and Nebula have such animosity between them? Also, we get to understand the past of Yondu and many other characters. Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2 does entail humor and quirky dialogue, but the character development this time around feels much more restrained and meaningful than the first one. Usually, sequels to a great film suffer from retreading the same plot and narrative beats from the first one, since the studio is too afraid to take a risk with the audience and their expectations. I'm not gonna say that the sequel doesn't retread some of the stuff that you're familiar with from the first one, but in a strange way, it's also kind of different from its predecessor. Like The Winter Soldier, I think James Gunn has smartly established a new plot device around the familiar structure from the original. To me, this film was more of a Guardians of the Galaxy Episode 22, Family Ties, or a well-known Futurama episode. And even though the movie works on an episodic structure, it's actually quite refreshing and awesome in my opinion. Other than the original, the film doesn't force you to watch all of the previous Marvel films in order to understand this one. There's no MacGuffin to run after, and there's no blue beam shooting up in the sky at the end. Now usually, studios always force the sequel to be twice the action, twice the excitement bullshit, but thankfully, James Gunn has a relatively good understanding why this would be a flaw, and instead focuses on the characters themselves, with whom many fell in love with. Okay, speaking of the characters, Chris Pratt as Peter Quill pulls off, in my opinion, an even better job than the first one, mainly because he had much more range of emotions to work with in this film. The sister relationship of Gamora and Nebula is interesting and heartbreaking at times, and although Batista aka Drax's backstory hasn't evolved beyond the first one, his one-liners are probably the best ones throughout the film, and the dry humor is much better emphasized in this film. Kurt Russell was awesome as always, and it's nice to see him part of the Marvel Universe, but surprisingly, the shining performance from this film was, for me, Michael Rooker as Yondu. His backstory motivations are so much better explored in this film that you really feel a lot of emotion and sympathy for the character. And the Slo-Mo Starship Massacre scene with Yondu and Rocket is undoubtedly the highlight of this film. It was so fucking cool, like bodies just falling all around. And of course, Baby Groot. Yeah, it was a lot of cutesy fun with him. Although it's extremely obvious why he was placed in this film and how much Marvel and Disney are gonna cash in on him, it never got to a point where I felt annoyed by him. So yeah, harmless fun. Doesn't work all the time, but when it does, it's in some of the most hilarious scenes of the film, particularly the time bomb sequence. Now, as we all know, Marvel films usually suffer from villain of the week syndrome, and without giving anything away, the villain in this film was much more thought out and connected to the first film, and if not for the predictable third act of the film, it could have been a great villain, actually empowered with Loki. Okay, so even with all its goods, Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2 suffers from some fundamental issues, namely pacing issues. The film starts off unwarrantably at a breakneck speed with unfunny jokes and dialogue that almost made me facepalm. But luckily after 15 minutes, I was proven wrong and the film went on to become more in control. It partly has to do with completely disposable side villains, aka the Golden Girls. They were mainly used for this one 80s arcade related joke and didn't even make much sense to me personally. And even though by the end of the film, emotions are strong, but the last act kind of dribbles a bit too long, and you could have shaved off at least 5 minutes from it. It's not really a knock against the writing, but the emotions are clear through visuals and do not need it to be spelled out for the audience. And of course, I cannot talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2 without mentioning the soundtrack of it. Taking notes from Tarantino's style of blending existing music into the film, one of the biggest highlights of the film was, of course, its 70s soundtrack. But how well does the second one hold up? Pretty good actually. You got the trancy Brandy from Looking Glass, the heartwarming Father and Son from Yusuf Islam, and also My Sweet Lord from George Harrison. Man, Peter's mom got some fucking good taste in music. So overall, Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2 is a whole lot of fun. Is it as good as the first one? In my humble opinion, Yeah, pretty much. Even though it's less quirky and quip-filled, Volume 2 emphasizes on character development, which I feel a smarter filmmaker with a sequel should do. All the characters are a whole lot of fun, and while watching, you'll definitely be on a roller coaster range of emotions. But due to its pacing issues and bulky dialogue at times, it's not one of the top best Marvel films in my opinion. But it is, quite frankly, one of the better sequels to any superhero film. 4 stars out of 5, and I cannot wait to see this once again in cinema soon. So, that was my review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. What are your expectations going into this film? Let me know in the comment section below. And as always, like if you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't of course. And this is Jabran bringing you the films that you have to watch before you kick the bucket.